Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and Texas Tech taking on TCU this week. Texas Tech basketball announced its non-conference schedule, so they appear ready to rock, tipping off November 25th. Should be, a really exciting season there. We have some really good questions from Inside the Red Raiders subscribers, so I want to dive right into them. The first one comes from ccrook. He has a basketball recruiting question. He says, with Deebo and Collins now committed to other schools, are there any other big names being mentioned with Beard and the staff? And who will they be going after in the 2021 class? Yeah, I think that's a really good question because you look at this point, a lot of the big names, a lot of Tech's targets, have gone off the board. Of course, you do have committed Jalen Tyson, a 6'6" wing guard, exactly the type that Coach Beard covets and likes to stack in his on his roster. Tyson's one of the top 50 players nationally, basically. So, I mean, that's a huge get. But then, like I said, a lot of the targets have come off the board. You would have liked to get Deebo and Collins, a big man, to help with depth inside, because I think that's where you're looking after the season. What you have to replace. You think Santos Silva will probably be gone? I mean, he could theoretically come back due to the blanket waiver, but possibility is that he would be gone. Joel Ntomwe is another guy who I think is going to be used. His 6'8" length, and is going to be used as more of like a 4, I believe, for Texas Tech. So you have some younger guys coming up, but like Reek, Tyreek Smith, and Golden. So there are some guys, but they're unproven that are coming up. So you need to get a big guy or two on the recruiting trail. And the thing is I'm looking, when you look at recruiting, you talk to people, there's not really a lot of high school guys coming up. Now, maybe they have another Russian hidden away somewhere like they have before, like I mentioned with Golden, and some other guys in the past, but I'm unaware of it. I think what you have to look at right now is the portal. Is Texas Tech has had great success working the transfer market. I mean, their high school recruits have been amazing, but you could argue that they've done a better job, even so, with through the transfer portal. So I don't think they're going to reach. I don't think they're going to get some guy who will only be here for a year. I think they're going to, if they find somebody they like, whether it be junior college or some high school guy that I'm unaware of, then they'll go after him. But if not, they'll be patient. They'll wait and see who pops up in the transfer portal, and they'll probably get who they want because that's what they've done. That's what history has shown in the last couple of recruiting cycles. All right, the next question comes from ExSaddleTramp, who wants to know basically if I foresee any change-ups, any shake-ups with the coaching staff after the season. Yeah, I think that's a very good possibility. I mean, I think the first guy that has to come to mind is Keith Patterson, the defensive coordinator. I know Coach Wells likes him a lot, likes him not only as just a coach, but also he likes his scheme. But the bottom line is that Tech has given up 41 points a game, going into this TCU game. They're not creating turnovers. They've regressed in some ways from a season ago. So I think it's one of those things that if they don't show improvement in these final 4 games, if Tech doesn't win at least 2 or 3 of these last 4 games, then yeah, I think there's going to have to be shakeups. I know a lot of people don't like David Yost, and I'm certainly not saying that it's impossible to see him replaced, but I think he will be back. But it just depends on how the season ends. So, I mean, if they only win 1 or none of the games, God forbid, of the last 4 games, then there's going to have to be some changes. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So I don't think it's going to be Wells. I think Wells will be back for at least another year. So I absolutely foresee if they struggle down the stretch that there'll be some changes. There'll be some shakeups in the coaching staff. All right, 78 Tech wants to know, he says, this will be conjecture at best, but how much do I think skipping preseason practices, he said (2), to do community service, and he said, as wonderful as that was, has contributed to Tech's abysmal showing on the field? Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to argue. They struggled against Houston Baptist in the opening game, so I think some of that was, they obviously didn't look prepared in some areas, but I think some of that was COVID related, to be honest. And in terms of skipping practices, there was two big community service deals. One, yes, they didn't have practice that day. Instead, they community service and they had a big team discussion. But the second one, they actually practiced that night. I think they scrimmaged that night, actually. They had a big time scrimmage. So I think that was really overhyped. Now, I understand people philosophically disagreeing with some of the statements, but also, for me, philosophically, I believe in, it's a free country. You're able to express your beliefs. They do have a platform, and they felt inclined to express those beliefs that they have. Whether right, wrong, or different, I'm always going to be for that. I, too, though, at the same time, am tired of, with sports being mixed with all the social messages, just whatever they are. It doesn't matter what the message are, if I agree with it or not. I want to watch the game, I think a lot of people are like that, and I'm certainly in that camp. But like I said, I understand them wanting to feel like they want to have some control over what's going on, and that makes sense. I think that's human nature, and that's what they were able to do. I'm glad they were able to help out, and I live in this community too. I'm glad they were able to help out in the Lubbock community. I think that's really cool, and they only missed one practice. So to answer your question, I don't think it really had an effect on anything, other than maybe how some fans viewed the team and just kind of their beliefs and that kind of stuff. But, oh well. All right, this is a really good question from TechFreak. He says, are recruits in the pipe reason enough to keep Wells and Yost? And also, how many wins does Tech need in order to get to a lower tier bowl game in the year 2020? Well, of course, there's no win precedent or win limit set. I mean, you don't have to win like 6 games or 5 and then have like a really good GPA or whatever, to qualify for a bowl game. But I still think in some ways it's even going to be perhaps more competitive, just because, there's going to be less bowl games. There's already several bowls who canceled, and now the Big Ten is playing and Pac-12 is playing. So I don't know how all the bowl games are going to shake out, like what it's going to look like. But I would think that if Tech got to 4 wins, that because of the fan base, such a great traveling fan base, and we see that with basketball, of course, I believe that Tech will get a bowl. It'll probably be something pretty close. And it'll be a lower tier bowl for sure. In terms of answering the recruiting question, for one, I know like Baron Morton is a huge David Yost fan. And he told me before, this is why, put in a crystal ball for him and why I believe he was going to Tech, despite all the offers from basically everybody in the region. But he told me that out of all the coaches recruiting, everybody has known that David Yost is his favorite coach, period. So, they talk on almost a daily basis. They go over the playbook. I think it would be very counterintuitive to get rid of David Yost, in my opinion. I don't think Wells is going to, unless something crazy happens. Never say never, that's for sure, and especially in 2020. But I think Wells is going to come back for a year, and I think Yost is going to with him. So, because if you lose Baron Morton, which look, Morton loves Tech. He loves West Texas. He's a Lubbock native. So there's more than not just David Yost and Coach Wells. It's not just this coaching staff that Baron Morton likes, but it is a role. It's a huge part of what's going on. And I think if you lose Morton, then your class starts to unravel. Morton, I've actually listed in a lot of these recruiting stories that Morton has played a big role in landing, Jackson, the offensive lineman from Mansfield Summit, Valdez, Cameron Valdez from Rockdale, one of the highest rated running backs. You go down the list. I think Jermaine Bradley, 6'5", 4-star receiver out of DeSoto. I think you lose those guys. I really do. So, to me, I think Wells and Yost come back for at least another year, get this class on campus, and then, year 3 is a totally different story, in my opinion, no matter how they're, well, I'm not going to say no matter how they're doing recruiting, but assuming they do something similar to what they're doing right now, which per recruit is pretty impressive. The volume isn't there, but the quality is amazing for Texas Tech standards, recent Texas Tech standards. So yeah, I think you got to keep those guys, if for nothing else, for that. This kind of goes back to the first question, really, and this is a great question. Again, Denny says, since the NCAA has given basketball that blanket waiver for eligibility, and so basically this doesn't count towards it. You can come back next year and without having lost a season of eligibility, no matter how much you play this season. He says, since the NCAA has given that blanket waiver, who might leave the team after this season? He said he doesn't see Shannon and Tomboy and McClung all heading off to the NBA. He says it would be really neat to see almost everyone return. Maybe 1 to 3 leave for better opportunities elsewhere, but college ball. Yeah, there might be some guys at the end of the roster who might, like you said, kind of leave for better opportunities or more playing time. But I think you got to think in Tomboy and McClung are 2 guys that are probably looking to, they want to go to the NBA. But you got Santos Silva. I mean, he's a senior, but again, he could come back. I mean, it's just going to depend on what kind of season they have, what their draft stock is. I mean, you kind of hope that they do go, right? I mean, because that means you had a great season more than likely. Terrence Shannon is a guy who's up on draft boards too, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going after this year. I expect a great season from him. But to your point, I think McClung is interesting to me because, he's already tested some NBA waters. You think for sure he's gone, but I don't know. I mean, maybe he does come back for another season. It just depends on how it goes. So it's, as the coaches like to say, it's a fluid situation, but I can definitely see maybe 2 or 3 guys going in terms of like the main guys, So you're talking about like McCullough, Edwards, like I said, Shannon, McClung, Tomboy, Santos Silva would be interesting. All those kind of guys, you have to wonder, like, will they come back? Jamarius Burton, you have to assume Burton's coming back. So it's going to be interesting to see just what happens this season, how it plays out, if they want to come back, all that. But I think it's safe to say at least 2 of those guys in the main core are probably going to leave. Panther Cat has a basketball question. He said, when Santos Silva comes out of the game, and assuming Tech wants 2 bigger players on the floor, who comes in? I think that's a big assumption now. I understand that, but Tech Coach Beard has no problem going small. He likes those interchangeable guys with the length they could bring to the court with Shannon and McCullough, and you start talking about Micah Peavy, those kind of guys. You can go a little smaller. So like I could see a situation where in Tomboy, who I can't believe I'm saying this, but he might come off the bench. I could see that happening. And, coming in for Santos Silva, he's 6'8". He actually is longer than Santos Silva, but he doesn't have the bulk, though he's added some bulk, working with strength coach John Riley here at Texas Tech. He had that year to develop. He's certainly added some bulk, but he's a different kind of player. He's not a back to the basket kind of guy like Santos Silva is a classic back to the basket on the block offensive player. But he can face up, he can stretch the floor, he can take the ball at the dribble, he can do some things offensively. And I think, he averaged, I believe, over 5 rebounds a game as a freshman for UNLV. So he will help you on the glass. So I think it'll be interesting how often they play both Santos Silva and Tomboy together. But I think that's who you bring in, because I want to say that Tyreek Smith will be ready to go, but I don't think he's ready for prime time. Like I don't see him playing heavy minutes against Kansas in the Big 12 opener. I just don't yet. And from what I've heard from practice, he's good, but he needs some time to develop. Same thing with Golden, the big Russian. He's not ready for prime time yet. He's got to develop. He's got to marinate in the program a little bit and get better before you just throw him out there to some of these really good teams that Texas Tech's going to be playing. So I think for me, it appears the plan is going to be Santos Silva starts. He's going to be one of your best players. And then in Tomboy coming in and spelling for him. That's without being at a practice, of course, because of Corona. And then without seeing them play yet. That's my opinion. Eastland has a baseball question. And I want to acknowledge that I respect it. But I don't have the answers for him. He wants to know what is the status on fall baseball and state of Red Raider baseball union. I don't have that for you right now. I really want to rededicate efforts towards baseball and giving great coverage that I think y'all became accustomed to when Alyssa was here. But as right now, with everything going on with Corona and football and basketball recruiting, right now I can tell you they're going to be good. Tim Tadlock's still here. It's going to look different, of course. They lost some really good players. I hate that. I really predicted they were going to win it all last year, which is something I just don't do. But that's how stacked they were last year. I think they're still going to be one of the best teams in the country. But we'll have to see how it plays out and what it looks like, all those things. And I don't know about fall baseball as of right now. All right, the final question comes from Raider Power 81, who said, I've stated that Tech got commitments from their two top offensive line targets in Jack Tucker and Jacoby Jackson. He says, are they the top two on Tech's board because they best fit their system or because they were the best that they had a realistic shot at landing? Well, I'll tell you this, the answer is both. If you think Jack Tucker and Jacoby Jackson were not wanted prospects, you're wrong. Tucker committed pretty early in the process for this recruiting cycle, but he had several Power 5 offers and from your direct competition in the Big 12. And then Jacoby Jackson had over 40 offers. He chose Texas Tech over 40 reported offers, and many of them Power 5. I mean, you beat out Oklahoma State. He was a TCU legacy that you landed. Those were huge pickups, and this is a direct quote from inside the program. I asked these two guys, because it was obvious, they put so much time and effort into these two guys, into recruiting Jacoby Jackson and Jack Tucker. I straight up asked, were these your top two targets from the beginning to the cycle to landing them? And the answer was absolutely yes. So, I mean, they're not five-star guys, but these are guys with offer lists, which in some ways carry more weight with me than even the ratings. Because basically you're talking about the coaching staff ratings as opposed to grade talent evaluators at 24/7 Sports and in just the industry in general. But still, those offer lists mean a lot to me, especially when they're committable offers. And this is the type of recruit that Tech normally doesn't get. Huge pickups. And I think Jacoby Jackson is criminally underrated, actually, by all the recruiting ranking services. So I expect him to get a nice bump before he actually ends up on campus and be much higher rated. So we'll have to see about that. But with that, I want to thank everyone for another wonderful round of questions. Appreciate you watching, and until next time.